Hi, welcome to this video of PowerShell training. In this video, I will teach you a framework of a script which you can use in almost every script wherein you need to collect or gather information about multiple objects. So this is very important framework. You just have to customize it for different requirements, just 2-3 lines, and you can use it literally in any script wherein you have to gather any information. So let's look at it. Basically, when creating any script, we use 3 sections. First section is kind of description or defining variables. Let's give it a name, section 1. The second section is the actual program or the execution of the script. And the third section is to manage the output. So let's create 3 sections and see how it can. So I'll put a comment, just differentiate these sections. All right, so as I said, in the first section, let's create some variables or the values. So I create a variable called input file. So in most of the cases, you can have this variable and mention a path for a file. For example, input file, maybe a txt or csv. Then we create a variable called output file with the path. It can be any path wherein you want to store the input file or the output files. All right, now let's create a variable called list wherein we import whatever items are there in this input file. So we use this command, get contents of input file. Okay, now for output, we create a array called output. It should be a blank array. All right, so now we have defined all the required variables. Let's move on to the next section, which is our main program. So in main program, what we do is, let's create a for each loop. And create a scope for each loop. We will write our code in between here. So for each item in the list, so we imported everything from our input file to this list variable, and now from list variable we perform certain actions on each item of the list variable. Okay, now let's create a PS object to gather few details about the item. PS custom object, then @ and again we create a curly bracket. All right, so let's create some headers for this PS object, like computer name. It can be anything based on your input file or what object you want to handle in this script. maybe status, and if we want to gather some details, detail1, one more header called detail2. Alright, computer name will be by default this item name that we use. We can just ignore the double quotes. Now status, let's keep it online for now, and let's discuss about detail1 and detail2 later on. Okay, now we have created a PS object. Let's insert this PS object into our output variable each time an item is processed from the list. So what we do is output plus equals PS object. Okay, now what we need to do is, for each item we create a common action and get the output in a variable called details. For example, let's take this get process. If I want to get a process called notepad on different computers, and the computer name would be item. So this is the action that I have defined for each item. I want to get a process called notepad and its detail into details. Now let's execute this one and see how the output looks. Alright, there is no process. Let's get something else, like let's execute this one and see which process are there. Process names, pin NT. Yeah, we have MSH. Let's see how the output looks for one process. Okay, let's assume that we want to get the name of the process and physical memory. Okay, so in details1 I get name of the process and physical memory. This is just an example. We can capture multiple things to see how it works. So at this moment, let's assume that we want to process this command on multiple computers. Alright, now let's say if we have to add if else condition into this. So if the condition brackets, curly brackets, else and curly brackets. So what we will do is we will just copy this thing into the if curly brackets, and our condition will be test connection of the computer just once. All right, so if the computer is online, we perform these actions, and if the computer is offline, we just mention that the computer is offline. We don't do any operation on it. So here we mention offline and the details would be blank, or you can just mention anything you want, like this one, let's say this one. All right, so this is how we process it. Alright, fair enough. So we created some input variables and we perform this action if the computer is reachable, we gather the details, and if the computer is not reachable, we mention that it is offline. Okay, now let's move on to the third section. This seems to be extra. Let me verify. All right, and now in order to have the output in various formats, what we can do is we can write a command called write output to write the output variable. This command will display the output. On screen. If we want to export the output into a text file, what we can do is we can just write this command, then out file, and the path of file which we have already mentioned as output file, this one. So this command will export the output. If we have to append the output without overwriting the existing content of this file, we just add a syntax over here to append. If we have to convert the output into a CSV file and export it as CSV file, what we do is output convert to CSV and then out file to output file. All right, in CSV file we can just have no type information, so that type information will be eliminated. We call it as export to CSV. Okay, and if we have to export the file as an HTML file, we can just change it to HTML. There is no type information switch here, and mention like this one. Now, although we can use multiple outputs here, what I recommend is at one time you just use one file extension to export the output. So you always keep these commands as commented. So let's say if we just have to export the file into plain text file, we just use this command and this command to display the output. Okay, so this is how the framework looks. Let me just check for the syntax one more time. If command, yeah, it looks better. So section 1 we define variables, section 2 we define a for each loop over here. Then in for each loop we define a condition, if else. In if condition we gather the details, then we create the PS object and we insert the PS object into the main output variable. If the computer is not reachable, we insert the value as offline into our final variable, which is output. Okay, so let's create these input files, or what we can do is we will just use our existing files. And let's see if that works or what errors we see. Okay, so we get this process details into output file, and it should also display it on the screen. All right, we face some issue. Alright, the path as you see over here is incorrect. I missed one folder called desktop. Okay. Remember, whenever you mention any file path as input file or output file, make sure that your account has read and write permissions on these files in order for your script to work correctly. Alright, let's see. Yeah, this connection. Okay, so we have got our output on the screen here. Whatever details we requested, details 1, details 2, the process, and there is one computer which was offline. Although it has displayed a error message for the offline computer, we will see how we can handle or eliminate these errors in upcoming videos. But for now, at least it is working as expected, wherein we have got the results on the screen. And let's see if output file, yeah, so here it is. Let's try to do it for CSV file. We comment this one and we uncomment this one, and let's try to run it again. Again we see the error message for the offline computer, and see what it has done for CSV file. No, this is not, this is, yeah. So you see over here it has generated a comma separated output over here and created the output in CSV format. Okay, this is how it works. Now let's talk about the if condition, or how you can use it multiple times. So let's say this, we just take an example of get process. Let's say if you have to gather information like hot fixes, to get the details of hot fix, how do you do that? So let's say you identify a command called hotfix, and you just need to check the latest hotfix that is installed on remote computers. Okay, so what you do is you sort the object with installed on date. So at this moment I know this command, that's why I am telling you, but going forward how to search for commands or how to look for this syntax, we will discuss that in upcoming videos. But for now, let's take an example that we have to collect the hotfix information, and we have that command, and we sort it with descending order and select the first one. Okay, so let's see how the output looks. First one we forgot to mention. Let's try to run this one. Oh, I don't have any hotfix installed. Alright, let's take a different example. Let's assume that I had this hotfix installed and I want to run this command. So what I do is I just get this command and replace this section with this command, and I need to get it for a remote computer. I add it here. Alright, now this script becomes a script to get the hotfix information from remote computer. Okay, you just add the relevant properties or the details what you want to fetch from this command, and now this same framework you can use for a different script. Okay, there could be some commands wherein this test connection is actually not usable. I mean, you can write some other conditions. For example, let's say I have to validate a user in Active Directory. In that case, what I use is get user let's say local user and the name of user, and this condition we can use it over here. So this is how it is. I mean, it's not hard and fast that you use test connection every time, but it can be a different connection condition every time. So this framework can actually be used for most of your scripts. What you have to customize is change your input file every time as per your requirement. Then you have to search for this command, what exactly or what details you need to gather from a list of items that you have to define, and that's it. You have the output on the screen and in the output file, whichever you want to have. Let's save this script for now. With the name framework. Alright, so I strongly recommend that you create this framework on your own and try executing multiple commands in this particular line and see if that works for you, and see what all error message you face and how to fix them. So thank you for watching this video. Have a good day.